I think is probably, even though we know, it's probably viewed that way by the majority of people in opposition to the old military regime, whereas, you know, we know that they're, you know, trying to figure out how they can possibly sell the new restrictions that come with the new U.S. aid package and implement a neoliberal program. They haven't actually done that yet, and they're still associated with opposition to that. So I think that might be part of it, and we need to know more. The other thing is, I think we may not yet fully understand the way women's empowerment is going to be articulated as it unfolds in Egypt. We're very familiar, you know, we know a lot of Egyptian women here, part of academia, middle class forces and so forth, but I heard a radio show on NPR yesterday, and they were interviewing an Egyptian woman who's trying to do the height report for the Middle East. I'm sorry, I'm talking too long. But at any rate, she was explaining that female genital mutilation is still maybe 90% of women in Egypt, and of course, and that the actual decision making on this is with women and grandmothers and grandmothers, and and included a long discussion about their perceptions of the fight for sexual satisfaction, et cetera, et cetera. All I'm trying to say is that there are probably a lot we don't understand about consciousness and expectations about women's empowerment at this point, and that aside with this rejection of the neoliberal economy probably explains a lot about support for women.
We don't have time for Adam and then
The anti-imperialism of the masses can take many different forms. It's almost like a liquid trying to find a vessel, finds different vessels. For a long time in the Middle East, the anti-imperialist thrust of the masses to throw imperialism off their backs took the fall of Arab nationalism based on Baathism, on Nasserism, on the belief of a strong state sector, tariffs, import substitution, etc., etc. Then, with the crisis of Third World nationalism, and simultaneously the crisis of Stalinism, where there had been big communist parties in the Arab world, with the failure of that two ideologies, the anti-imperialism of the Arab and Muslim masses took a very different form, particularly with Islam being the form of it. And we see here a combination of a number of different factors. Firstly, the reaction to the social disintegration of societies, the breaking down of old economic structures through combined and uneven development and imperialist intrusion into the countries, creating movements that represent 4 or 5 things simultaneously. To the one part, the anti-imperialism of the masses, to another part, a reactionary belief to turn the clock back to an older, more stable, more not as they would say, polluted by Western ideas, but an older, more stable society on Islamic and religious lines. Thirdly, a populist nature, and fourthly, as Chris just said so well, social structure, where the main forms of the bourgeois state no longer provide social services. Islamic organizations will provide some distribution of food, some education, some law and order, etc. And how these different aspects that go together to form contemporary Islamic sentiment in the Third World and in the Middle East mix is a very concrete mix, and it's different in each case, and it changes at each time what the precise mix of these different ingredients are. Where one can go wrong is if one tries to say they're just one thing or the other. If one sees them as just reactionary, one sees them, one can fall into the Islamophobic camp that much of the European left has fallen into. If one sees them as just progressive, you can fall into the Islamic tailism that leads to a vote for the Muslim Brotherhood. What one has to do is walk and chew gum at the same time and say, yes, we stand with them insofar as they're against imperialism, but simultaneously, we never stop for a second to point out all their many reactionary aspects and build a proletarian and popular alternative to them.
Let me just take a couple minutes to address the last couple of points, and then we have to move on. In terms of the different forms of Islamism, building on what Adam was just saying, think about variations in totally different movements, or apparently totally different movements. Look at the variants today of Latin American left populism, or before that of Latin American right populism, and how it was shaped by the different cultural, political, and social, and economic, and historical legacies in each of those countries. Look even at the difference in the parties of the second or third internationals and how they're impacted by the same factors, even in an international whose main purpose was to homogenize the lessons and strategy of those parties. And the same is true in the different offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood and similar parties, whether it's in the Arab world or South Asia or East Asia, and how they're impacted by all of the factors that Adam mentioned. In terms of understanding Islam in Pakistan, I think there's no better place to start than Sadia Tour's book, which again will spread by email. Just one, well, let me leave it at that. In terms of following up on Chris's points, which were very good, I'll just say that it's encouraging to see the number of women who are active in solidarity with Tunisia and Egypt and Palestine concretely day by day. And I'm talking both about people who are here, people who are back home in those countries, who are often in the same formation, a solidarity group. National Lawyers Guild has sent delegations to each of those countries, and some of them are going to be in Tunisia next week, sharing experiences. And you can be on a list or a conference call with some of these forces and be the only man there. That's great. So I'll end on that note.
Thank you. So we will reconvene in 15 minutes for the next session. Good.
What's going on?